Okay, so this is going to be apparently a three-part thing. I had started recording the end of August and the beginning of September. I was hoping to do all of September, and I was unable to finish that. So at the end of the last video, I started talking about naked pictures of famous people by Jon Stewart, and I was talking about how they're very similar to some of his stand-up routines that he does on The Daily Show. Larry King is the guy I was trying to think of. There's an essay that is a interview that Larry King does with Hitler, and how Hitler's not dead, and he's this really misunderstood person, and he's gone through counseling, and now he's, a much better person, and yeah, that was sort of ridiculous. That particular one, I mean, they're all sort of ridiculous. There's one where he spends like a weekend with JFK. I think it's supposed to be before he's become the president, so he still is a young man, and it's always hard with those stories, because some of them are really kind of abrasive, where he seems to have some sort of affection for the subjects, but he's also, because it's satire, and he kind of pushes things to their outer limits in terms of what he can get away with saying or characterizing the person as. So he's kind of mean to how he characterizes the Kennedys, certainly. He has another one where it's supposed to be a series of correspondences between Lady Di and Mother Teresa, where he makes Lady Di look pretty superficial and selfish, which I don't know very much about her, but it was interesting. So I'm glad I read that, because reading his work that's not connected with The Daily Show informs the stuff that he does with The Daily Show, but it's also sort of its own thing, and he can get away with a lot of things that he doesn't get away with on The Daily Show because it's on Comedy Central. So after that, I read yet another volume of Scalped, Volume 4, The Gravel in Your Guts. And frankly, I don't remember what the plot is of that particular one. I think probably, if I remember correctly, in that one, Dash starts sleeping with the messed up daughter of Red Crow, who had some sort of crush on him when they were kids before he left the reservation, and she is all kinds of messed up. She's had several boyfriends, and she's had at least one husband, one of whom was abusive, and she is addicted to some kind of drug. I don't remember what it is, but it's a drug that's very common on Indian reservations, apparently, and she gets Dash hooked on that because he apparently can't deal with everything that's going on with the pressure he's getting from the FBI and then from Red Crow, and just trying to deal with all these things. Then after that, I finished The Hero with 1,000 Faces. That's by Joseph Campbell. It was sort of his opus. It was his major work in terms of mythology, and then also sort of in terms of philosophy, I guess. And it's something that I started reading a long time ago that I thought I'd finished, but I hadn't. And its central theme is the idea of the monomyth, that religious stories and folk tales and myths are all part of one larger story, and they just have different parts of the overall myth or different variations on the same myth, and he goes through them and deconstructs them, and he brings a lot of psychology into it. So he was very much basing a lot of his ideas of the archetype on Jung, and then also on Freud. And it's a fairly dense work. Lots and lots and lots of references that he makes in that, because he wanted to make it a very kind of authoritative and very well-researched book, and I think it really is. George Lucas certainly has been very influenced by Joseph Campbell, and I think some other people have too. He's a very significant person. He had a series with Bill Moyers, The Power of Myth, and he did a couple other series with Bill Moyers, where he was just talking to him about different myths and folk tales. And then after that, I read The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. It's part of a trilogy, the Night Angel trilogy, and that is about, it's a fantasy series that is sort of the traditional kind of medieval fantasy world, where this kid Azoth, who is an orphan, grows up in this area called the Barrens, and it's this really disgusting, rundown part of the city. The beggars and thieves and prostitutes all live in the Sorry, that's the Barrens. It's the Warrens. And if they're lucky, they can sort of work their way up to not being worried about being murdered at any time, but it's just a very desperate kind of life that you live if you live in the Warrens. He has an interaction at the very beginning of the book where he runs into Durzo Blint, who is this legendary assassin, and he decides that he's going to get out of the Warrens, and he is going to apprentice to Durzo Blint. So there's a lot of jumps in time in how old he is, and there's some other perspectives in the book, but most of them are from Azoth's perspective. I think he changes his name at a certain point when he actually becomes apprenticed, but that was a good series, but it's pretty rough. It's got quite a bit of language and sex and violence, so if you're put off by that, there's plenty enough of that to go around. After that, I read Scalped Volume 5, Hi Lonesome, and again, I would need to go back and look at what happens in that one, because I do not honestly remember. It's been way too long. And then after that, I read Animal Crackers by Jean Luen Yang, who is fast becoming one of my favorite artists. That was another graphic novel, and I think he's a person that sort of came out of the zine scene. I believe that story was originally published as a zine, which is Gordon Yamamoto and the King of the Dorks. And it's 3 different stories that are all connected. That's just about these people in high school that are trying to connect with each other, and they're trying to be accepted, but they also want to retain their individuality. And he's just a really good illustrator. He's got this really cool, clean style, and he's able to mix really bizarre, surreal, dreamlike things with sort of natural, normal, day-to-day kind of struggles for average people, and makes it work somehow. So it's about bullying, and there's a weird story about this futuristic society that one of the characters, the leader of that society, tries to get this girl to go away with him, but then it turns out that he's sort of an evil person. But he wrote another book that is American-born Chinese that is just, I think it really well encapsulates the experience of being a minority in a majority population, especially in the United States, and wanting to be a part of the larger culture without losing your identity, and just that struggle of your roots and feeling ostracized and stigmatized and stereotyped by the popular culture, and so trying to subvert that and just present yourself as white or Caucasian. So yeah, so that is the rest of September, and do the last 3 months probably in the next couple weeks.